Good day. Here at Brookings Radio, we welcome Dr. Summer Schultz, the new superintendent of Brookings Schools. And Dr. Schultz, welcome, and thanks for coming over.
Well, thank you for asking me. I'm happy to be here.
First of all, just tell us about yourself.
Man, that's such a loaded question. Where do you begin?
And then you begin where you want to begin.
Well, I have been the superintendent at Del Rapids Public Schools for the past 11 years. Prior to that, I was principal and superintendent in Minnesota. I grew up in Coleman, South Dakota, so not very far. And that's where I began my teaching career after receiving my undergraduate at Dakota State University. And so I've taught in a lot of areas. I've taught in elementary ed, special education, and K-12 technology. So I kind of went the technology in schools path after my first master's degree, and then after moving over to Minnesota, I got my administrative degree and really have been doing that ever since. But that pretty diverse teaching background, I think, helps me so much as a superintendent. And so I really attribute some of those connections I can make with my different staff members, my different students and families from having taught in a lot of areas in schools. I was a coach for many years.
What did you coach?
At Coleman Egan, I was basketball and track coach. And then in Marshall, Minnesota, I was head girls track there too.
Okay.
So.
I'm from Marshall. Originally.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I only spent 2 years in Marshall.
Right.
But again, just a great opportunity to see education from a different side of things. And so, right now in South Dakota, I'm the president of the Superintendents Association. I'm just finishing that up. And so that's allowed me to, get to know schools across the state a little bit better. And I think although we sometimes do things differently, we are all, facing some of those same giants and barriers to success. And so we learn from each other. And I've been in Brookings now for just a small time, but so far I know this was a good decision to be here. So,
obviously a much bigger school system, but what are your thoughts on what you've seen so far?
Well, before I even applied for the superintendent position, I did a lot of research.
Sure.
Where I come from, I in Del Rapids, my community, my whole educational community has been amazing to work with, and so you don't leave that type of setting. And as a mom, you don't move away from something like that unless you know it is the right move for you in your career and you as a family. And so what I found researching the district, I'm seeing come to be. And so that's great. What I'm finding and what I thought I knew was the foundation that Brookings School District is built on is so strong. And with that comes a very strong administrative team. We have administrators that are not necessarily veteran in their current positions, but if you look at their time and their tenure in education, they are. And they are a great group that work hard together. I saw a school board that was very diverse in how it thinks, which is also good because if we all think the same way, we don't ever grow. And the community, the partnerships in this community that are going to be essential to get Brookings School District where it needs to go and to be successful are all there. So all of those things that led me to want to apply, I'm seeing come to fruition already. And so that's really exciting.
You come in after a superintendent left in not the best of circumstances. It was a bit controversial. Did that give you pause at all?
I think, again, I wouldn't have done my family and my self-diligence if I hadn't considered that and then looked again at what the foundation of Brookings school community is. And so I don't know that pause is the word. In the superintendent realms and in professional realms, you look for the positives. And I think we all, even in school districts and communities, we have times where things aren't going as well as we want them to go. And typically they're not, there's not one thing to fault that. And so I can appreciate that as a professional too. And so, I just had to look at that strong foundation that's been built here and know that, it was still a very good time to come to Brookings.
Sure. And you come in and right away you have this project with two elementary schools being built, which is pretty massive.
Yeah, school construction is fun. It's one of those that when we limit that barrier of facility to what we want to accomplish educationally, it's a great thing. So to know that I'm going to be able to, pick up where things had left off and deciding what are those educational specifications we want in those buildings. I think as a district, we're going to really take a look at that to make sure that, what we plan for those buildings is, kind of forward thinking also. So that's exciting. The hard work's been done. I get to say that the hard work's been done. The crews on site they're working tirelessly. I'm really impressed with the construction folks that are out there. And so, those projects being going, that was another thing that actually drew me to the community. So.
What are your thoughts on Brookings academically and where we're going and where we might need to go?
Yeah, that's a good question. And having just started, I don't necessarily know what I don't know. Right. But I do know that when you have to take some of that data that we have and really consider it in order to move forward in a way that I know how to lead. And so I have to get a good grasp of where we're at. I will say, there's some places that I think we do need to make some improvements in. And the one thing that I am known for is a very possibly basic approach to instruction and to learning. I think we have to find out what our kids need, and then we find a way to give it to them. And we have to find out where our teachers are strong and where our teachers need some improvement, because as a professional, I need improvement all the time in order to continue to adapt to the needs of my kids. And so we need to make sure we're doing that. I'm not necessarily drawn to names and things that are out there. I am very much a believer in best practices, and those best practices is making sure that we have levels of success defined to know that kids are getting what they need, and if they're not meeting what we need, if they're not meeting those goals we are designing for them, then we have to go another approach. There's not a one size fits all. So we're really going to dig into that, and that's one thing I've found with this admin team is they seem pretty excited about, we're going to maybe get back a basic approach to good teaching and ensuring our learners are getting what they need.
And schools are still dealing with the impacts of the pandemic, and we've seen that in test scores, and that's something you still have to try to overcome, isn't it?
We do have to consider that, but we also have to say, okay, this is where we're at, and maybe some of the things we are doing need to be changed, or they need to be, modified. But without a strong sense of defined success criteria, and that's a fancy way of saying, let's look and see if our kids are making progress with what we're doing. We have to define that first. What is going to define success at Brookings? I think if we could all get on the same page of what we want success to look like for those kids, then we get down to just the work of how we get there. And we might differ. I know this is a community that has had, different ideas of what best instruction looks like. And I think maybe that's part of where I come in and say, good teaching, no matter what it's called, is good teaching. And one of the number one success criteria or thing that just, helps define success is a good teacher. And so we just really need to look at that. And what I see in Brookings is a staff full of good teachers, and I love it. I mean, I wouldn't bring I have a fourth grader coming here. I would not bring her if I didn't truly believe that, like you said, we might need to be looking forward, knowing that we have some areas we want to improve, but we will.
Teacher shortages are a challenge. How do you deal with that?
I would say there are areas in South Dakota right now that are even critical. They're beyond challenging. They're critical, and they're in some of our higher needs areas. And so
special ed is a special need.
It is, and in Brookings, we have some things in place that are going to help us work with some of our higher needs students that do need a different possible, environment for them to be successful. And we want that to be right here in Brookings, but we have to be able to staff it. And, the state is looking at some creative things right now to help get some of our classified staff through a program a bit quicker. But we need to ensure as a community that Brookings school community is a place people want to come. We have to find even more partnerships with our university, because when they do have graduates, man, we want them to stay here. We want them to go, why would I leave Brookings? I want to stay in the Brookings community. But that means that as a community, we have to give each other a little grace sometimes. We have to be patient with each other, and we have to make a community that people want to stay in. And we don't do that by finding all the things wrong with each other. We do that by figuring out that we all have the same goal. We might want to get there differently. So working together to make Brookings a place that our teachers want to come and they want to stay. But we also, we have to look at the big picture and work with our, licensing and certification and our state levels and have them help us out a little bit with that.
A new apprenticeship program sounds exciting. There are Brookings participants in that? That's great.
We do. We have some that were able to get into that program, 4 or 5 of them actually.
That's good, because I think there's 91 statewide.
Yes. I was really happy that as, there in June when I felt like I was the superintendent at 2 places. I had 2 from Del Rapids get in, and like I said, 4 or 5 from Brookings. And I thought, man, this is a start. This is a start. But
for those who don't know, quickly, it's teachers' aides can become teachers, online courses and the like, while they're still being a teacher's aide.
Yeah, and they get to use that hands-on time that they're working with kids as part of their credit piece. So it's a wonderful opportunity. Even
though you're new, you got to take part in the hiring of a couple key administrators, the high school principal and activities director. Tell us about that process a little bit.
Yeah, the first was the high school principal. We hired Heather Miller-Sink, and her and I have had a good time talking that some people in the community, when they meet her, they say, "Oh, you're the gal from Minnesota. You're the gal from the Twin Cities." Well, what we want to make sure people understand is she's a South Dakota girl. She's a South Dakota girl, but her wealth of knowledge and her wealth of work at this point has just really expanded also to the Twin Cities area. And if you look at the schools she has led, man, has she killed it. When I met her in that interview, I knew I wanted her on this team. She leads with grace, but she's tough. There's not much she hasn't seen. Curriculum-wise, she is very strong. She is very strong in creating positive behavioral intervention type programs in the schools. And so although she's new to Brookings, she's a veteran, but she's a veteran that people look at and go, man, I want her on my team. And then the activities director.
Familiar with him.
Yeah, I'm a little familiar with him. Jeff Dvorak has been in Del Rapids since I was in high school, which sadly has been quite a while. But I've worked with Jeff for the last 11 years at Del Rapids, and I gave him one of the toughest jobs. I think he was my facility director and athletic director or activities director, and that's a huge job in a district. And I tell you, I trust him. He is one of those individuals that will work tirelessly to just build that pride in a community. That's what he does. And so when he was willing to come to Brookings also, I wanted the interview team to see what I knew, but they did. And he's going to be a great addition to this whole community. I guarantee it.
We're out of time, but Dr. Schultz, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brookings School Superintendent Summer Schultz, right here at Brookings Radio.